everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and the iPhone XR has been out for about a week and a half. I've been using it every single day as my main phone, and it's been a mostly positive experience. Now, this is the budget iPhone and comes in at $749 for 64 gigs of storage. I wouldn't really call that budget, but for an iPhone right now, it is a budget. So $749, 64 gigs of storage. For an extra $50, you can get 128, and that's really the sweet spot on this phone. And $800 for 128 gigs of storage, I think, will suit most people's needs. You can bump that up to 256, but then you're getting close to the price of the XS, and it's one of those things where that gets a little bit pricey when you get up to that range, and I don't know if you need all that. So I usually use about 30 to 40 gigs of storage on my phones total. After a couple of years, that's still what I'm using, and 64 is good for most people. 128 is that sweet spot. Now, the design is very familiar. It's a little bit different than the XS or the XS Max. You are lacking that camera bump and the extra camera. Well, you have a camera bump, but the extra camera. And then you also have the same camera, but a different lens than the XS and XS Max. So it's still quite as good. Same sensor and everything. You have glass front and back, wireless charging, but aluminum around the outside edges, and that makes it a little bit lighter. But you do have a non or asymmetrical charge port, so that's kind of strange. But the speakers are symmetrical, but that middle lightning connector charge port is not, and that's probably to make way for the display. And that's the most controversial thing about this phone, is the display is between 720p and 1080p, and to me that's not a big deal because the pixel per inch density is 326. It's the same as the 8 or the 7. That's not a big deal to me. However, for the price of the phone and modern phones, it is a little bit low as far as the resolution numbers are concerned. Now, I showed this to many people, both photography people, video people, and I only had one say that these displays look any different at all. I showed them side by side with the XS Max, and I've had one person say that the outside edge, right around the edges where they curve the liquid retina display, that's what gives it that name, it's a little fuzzy, and maybe that's true. Text is crisp, colors are great, it's accurate, it's bright in sunlight. I've had no issues with it. And I think the people that are concerned about the numbers aren't really taking a look at it side by side. Now, some people have, and some people can see the difference. For me, it's not a concern, and I think most people won't even mind. However, the viewing angles aren't as good as the new iPad's viewing angles with its liquid retina display, and it's good, but it's not as good. And the other thing to consider, too, is if flicker bothers you on displays, such as myself, with pulse width modulation on an iPhone XS Max, for example, or OLED displays, this is the phone for you. It doesn't flicker at all. It has none of those traits because it's an LCD display. So you don't get that flicker. It doesn't use pulse width modulation to flash the screen to make it brighter or darker. So you're never getting that flicker, and it doesn't harm your eyes. So that part has been really great to use all week long in this. Now, aside from the display, the specs are really good. It's the same as the XS and XS Max minus 1 gig of RAM, and that's probably because of the display. You just don't need it when you're not pushing the graphics chip as hard to power all those pixels. So because we don't have as many pixels, it doesn't have to work as hard, doesn't need as much RAM. And most of the time, you don't need to pay attention to RAM anyway on an iPhone. It just works, and you don't have to think about it. And the speed of the A12 is super fast. It's underutilized in this phone, quite honestly. There's nothing you're going to do on the phone that's going to be slow. Video rendering, anything. It doesn't matter. It's just not going to be slow. So if there's a hiccup, that might be part of iOS doing something, but for the most part, you're going to have no issues with that whatsoever. Now, the camera on the back is quite good, like I said. It's got great video, it's stabilized, 4K video, 4K HDR. It's not true HDR. You can't edit it and put it in HDR Rec 2020 and actually do HDR footage with it, but it does look quite good. But it does have great processing due to the neural engine and everything else that's on that A12 chip. Now, the forward-facing camera is good. It's the same camera that you get on all the other iPhones, so you're going to get the true depth sensor and everything like that when it comes to taking portraits and that sort of thing. So it does a great job, and it's what you expect from a XS, XS Max, or an iPhone X even. So it's quite good that way. Now, I took some photo and video with the rear camera, so let's take a look at that now. recording using the iPhone XR camera, and as you can see, the image out of it is quite good. It is stabilized. I'm walking over some pretty rough terrain, and it seems to be doing a pretty good job. Now I can zoom, pinch to zoom, but it is digital, but I think overall it looks pretty good. And in general, the image coming out of it with the new neural engine figuring out the HDR and everything, I think looks pretty good. And as far as video cameras out there, the XS, the XS Max, and the XR have the best out there from any that I've tested. The focusing of the XR is just as fast as any of the other phones. If I get closer to this tree here, you'll see if I tap on the tree, tap on the rocks behind it, it's nice and smooth and clear. And I think overall works really well. And the image is really impressive, at least from what I can see on the screen right now. Now, the battery life on the XR is really good. The battery life is easily 1 to 2 days of battery. And I know some tests show this in sort of a lab situation where you're running them full brightness and running certain tasks next to a XS Max or a Note 9, those sorts of things. But if you're using this every day, day to day, because of that lower resolution LCD, and also because of the size of the battery being in between, a little bit smaller than the XS Max, but pretty large in general, I easily get to the end of the day with about 40 to 50% battery life left. In fact, if you look at my screen time's about 5 hours every single day with about 40 to 50% battery life left. I've had no issues whatsoever as far as that goes. And if you're using a vehicle to use CarPlay or CarPlay in a car or whatever you're doing with it and it's plugged in, it's going to extend that battery even more. Now, as far as charging it goes, Apple really needs to include a faster charger, such as the iPad charger in the box. This would be ideal for most people if you're going to use it wired. Of course, you do get wireless charging, and that's how I charge it most of the time on a 7.5 watt wireless charger. And it charges in a couple hours. I have no issues there. I've never run into an issue where I didn't have enough power for what I needed to do throughout the day on this display. Now, the iPhone XR has wider stereo sound, just like the XS and XS Max, with the speaker on top and the bottom, and it's nice and loud. So let's see if we can hear that through these microphones anyway. So these are the phones themselves. Now, you may or may not like either one of these colors. I really like the red, although blue looks pretty good too. Now, as far as things I don't really like about it, there's not very much. One of the things is I do miss the headphone jack. I think they could put it back, but they're just never going to at this point. And they definitely should include a faster charger. This is the iPad charger. I think they should include this one. This would charge it plenty fast for most people in a couple hours or so. If you use the MacBook charger, you can do that even faster, but it's not worth the extra price with the cables and everything at this point. Now, I wirelessly charge this. I'll link the one I use in the description below, but I wirelessly charge this all the time, so it's not that much of an issue, and it's not terribly expensive for that charger, but I just think they should include that. At this point, get rid of the other charger. Nobody really uses it, and if they do, they wish it charged faster anyway, so you've got those two things going against it. Also, you only have IP67 certification, so you don't want to get it too wet, as it won't last as long as, say, the iPhone XS Max or XS. The other negative I have is Face ID. While tons of people love Face ID, it works fine on this. It unlocks quick, but I really miss the fingerprint reader for certain things. The unlock, if it had one in the Apple logo, they're never going to do that, but I would love one here or under the display like we see with the OnePlus 6T, something like that in the future. Maybe they'll do that, I don't know. But there's not really much negative to say about this phone. It's great battery life, solid build, not as expensive, and it's probably the phone for most people. So if you picked one of these up, I'd love to hear which one you've got. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, though, please subscribe and like. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.